The next thing we need to talk about is our system requirements. And Vue actually does have some system requirements in order for it to function properly. So I'm going to click over here where it says Vue Infinite, the standalone solution. So what I did was I went to try and I went to View, and then I chose this top one up here at the top. And now I'm going to click on this More Information. And I have these kind of menus up here across the top that I can click on and go directly to something that I need, or I can use this arrow over here to the right to go to navigate page by page to what I need. You can also kind of look through this and see what all Vue is capable of doing. There is definitely a lot more example renders that shows a lot more of what Vue is capable of doing. So I'm going to go to Requirements and Pricing. And we can see here under the Windows that it requires Windows XP, Vista, 7, Windows 8, 32, or 64. I highly recommend 64, and the reason why is because you can make much larger scenes with 64 compared to 32. It says it requires a 2 GHz Pentium 4 or better processor. And what I'm going to say here, and it's not written here, is that this is kind of the minimum. And what the maximum should be is dependent upon what your scene is going to be. So if you have a very large scene, obviously you're going to need more than a 2 GHz Pentium 4, or you could be here for a couple years rendering. Then it says here 1 GB of free RAM. Again, I'm going to say that this is the absolute minimum for a very small scene. If you're going to make a large scene, I recommend 16 GB or more of memory. Then it says here 200 megabytes of free hard disk space. And again, I'm going to say that this is the minimum, and it says up here minimum. And again, this is dependent upon the size of your scene. So if you have a very large scene, it's going to take up more hard drive space. And then down here, it says 1200 by 768 in 65K color, 16-bit, 24 bits minimum. And I'm going to assume that this is referring to your monitor. And again, this is the minimum. I definitely recommend something much more larger. And then here we get into recommended system specs. And again, I'm going to say that this is the minimum, because what kind of system resources you need is really, again, dependent upon how many polygons you have in your scene, which is what basically determines the size of your scene. So it says Windows 64-bit, and I totally agree with that. A multi-core CPU, and I definitely agree with this. Of course, the more cores you have, the faster it will render. 4 GB plus of memory. For what I'm going to show you, I recommend 16 GB or more. 4 GB of free hard disk space. I would say that that's probably true for most of the scenes that we will create. Maybe we might need a little bit more, give or take some. An OpenGL accelerated video board, and I definitely recommend this. So how can you tell if your system meets these requirements? It's going to be a question that I'm sure everybody will ask me. We can click on Start and right click on Computer and go to Properties and start in the Properties panel first. So I'm just going to slide this off to the side. Alright, so the first one where it talks about 64-bit version of Windows and 7, I can see here that I'm running Windows 7 Professional, and I'm pretty sure that this is the 64-bit edition because I had to install a 64-bit version of drivers. It says multi-core CPU, Intel quad-core, Core 7 i7 or Mac Pro. So multi-core CPU. Unfortunately, on this computer I was only able to afford 2 processors, each containing 4 cores, so I have 8 cores total. And I have a 2.4 gigahertz processor. Maybe sometime in the future I'll be able to afford something a little bit better, but right now I cannot. The other way that you can tell how many cores you have, you can simply right click on your bar down here and go to the Start Task Manager and go to Performance. And where it says CPU usage history, you can just count up the cores here. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That means you have 8 cores. And some of you may have 12 or 16. The next one says 4 gigabytes plus of RAM. So on this particular system, I have about 51 gigabytes of RAM installed. I use my personal system for creating professional scenes to do professional work, and that's why I have a lot more system RAM than probably what you would need to actually learn the software. So I know I meet this requirement. The next one is 4 gigabytes plus of free hard disk space. And of course, it doesn't show my hard drives here, so I actually have to go somewhere else for that. I'm just going to go to Computer. Click Start, just go to Computer. And I'm going to get rid of all the sketching going on the screen here. I can see that I have a D drive, and this is actually a mechanical drive. It's pretty slow. It's where I store, archive my data. I have an E drive, and this is a solid state drive, and I can see I got about half the drive free, and this is where I actually keep all of my professional view work. And if possible, of course, solid state drive is going to be the fastest, going to work the best for you, but if you can't afford a solid state drive, I recommend something that spins at 7200 revolutions per minute or faster. And then this one here is a RAID. This is another backup drive. This is a RAID. I think it's a mirror RAID. And it's a mirror RAID composed of mechanical drives, so of course this is going to be very slow and non-responsive. You can see I have all my drivers and important things backed up there for this particular system. And my C drive is also a solid state drive. So I know that my hard drives meet the minimum system requirements, or the recommended, I should say. The next one on the list talks about an OpenGL accelerated video card. Sorry, I can't draw very straight. An OpenGL accelerated video card, see below for optimal, click back here, compatibility. So I'm going to scroll down here and get rid of my line again. And we have several video cards that View will actually support. Now, one thing I want to tell you is you want to avoid the ATI video cards. I've kind of had problems with those historically. And it's not that the video cards can't put out, it's just the drivers are just a bit unstable, so I try to avoid these as much as possible. Of course, you're welcome to use it if you feel you want to push the envelope. Definitely, put an ATI video card in your machine and spend the many hours troubleshooting that if that's kind of your thing. How to tell what kind of video card you have in your system, where I'm just going to right click and go to Properties again. See if that information is revealed here. And it is not. So another place that we can do is we can right click on Computer and go to Manage, which will open the computer management. We can go into our device manager where it says display adapters, and this particular machine has an NVIDIA Quadro FX 5800. So let's look in our list here. It says NVIDIA Quadro FX 1800 to 1500, so that is my video card falls in this category here. And it says required driver version Forceware 19190.38, has a little 3 next to it, so there must be some footnotes down here at the bottom. And it says limitations, shaded billboard not supported on the Mac. Well, luckily I'm not running a Mac, so I don't have to worry about that. Let's scroll down to the bottom and see footnote number 3. There's a little warning down here. It says, do not install NVIDIA driver 270.61. These drivers weren't certified with View and may present severe OpenGL issues. And for some reason I'm having a little bit of flashback right now, and I remember having this issue and having to go back a version.